Ghost of Tsushima was one of the biggest surprises of 2020. A game set in feudal Japan, a period that a certain game about hooded assassins has not seen the absolute untapped potential of such an idea. But soon after the game was launched, developers announced a pretty surprising update, a completely free co-op mode to be released in October. Sucker Punch had already gained a lot of good faith when compared to other developers during this time, and being open to criticism. Some were very curious how a single player game with very deep combat mechanics would translate into a multiplayer format, but those questions were answered once the update had finally released. This single update was as feature complete as a full $60 product, but at the price tag of completely free. A gear system that was fair and balanced, 4 distinct classes, each with their own abilities, ultimates and playstyles. A completely new story quest with a tone ripped straight out of Neo, and narrated by the legendary Greg Baldwin. A horde mode with 4-player co-op, where 4 samurais race across rooftops to their destination to defeat wave upon wave of Uni, and a Destiny-like raid mode. This game has an even better reputation than most so-called online services, with no microtransactions in sight, and no plans to add them too. Ghost of Tsushima Legends will go down as one of the single best ways to completely reinvent your gameplay genre into something completely new. Legends is set during the Mongol invasion of Tsushima. During the invasion, the Mongols unleashed a horde of evil demons known as Uni into the mortal realm. To combat this new threat, the ghosts will rise. Yes, to some, Jin Sakai was the only ghost, but they were actually 4. The honorable samurai who fought by their samurai code. The assassins who have abandoned their samurai ways to master the arts of stealth and deception. The hunter who uses her skills with the bow to cut down Uni by the thousands. And the Ronin, who fights for their brothers and sisters of Tsushima. The ghosts will have to fight together to stop the Uni from destroying the land of Tsushima. The story of Legends doesn't have any twists or turns, but is an incredible way to tell a new story of the War of Tsushima. As you go through many story quests, Greg Baldwin will narrate your entire experience and tell the story of the heroic ghosts.
To the temples and kept under watchful eye. For even today, some claim they feel the power of Oni, pushing against their prisons, eager to enter our world once more.
It's a really interesting way to tell a story. It may not be the most nuanced narrative, but how it's presented is what sells it to the player. The tone is incredibly grim, far more than the main story, but its more fantasy-like tone is a welcome change to the realistic take of the main narrative. Ghost of Tsushima was like a painting in a museum. The colours, the animations, the landscapes, the environment and the music all came together to create a beautiful experience. Legends though completely changes the colour palette to be much darker and bleaker, as if the colour has been robbed from the world completely. But this gives way to a much darker ambience. Massive floating hearts, environments drenched in blood, and Mongols with no faces like something out of Slenderman. It really shows that the people at Sucker Punch can make something really beautiful. It may not look as next gen as something like The Last of Us 2, but it never had to be. The gameplay of Legends is very similar to Ghosts, but instead of the player having access to the 4 stances of the base game, each class gets access to one stance, essentially creating 4 separate playstyles from one original character type. Whereas before, you could fight a Mongol with a giant axe easily. Now, the ghosts will have to cooperate to destroy their foes. Each class has specific abilities, like the Ronin, who can raise wounded allies back to combat. The Hunter, who can fire 3 arrows that can kill enemies in one hit. The Samurai, who can cause massive damage with his katana. And the Assassin, who can become a fast moving threat to be reckoned with. These abilities can be further modified through leveling up and adding further customization to find out what works for you. All of these classes are really fun to use, and having a perfect team build can make you a real threat. A Destiny-like gear system has been added, where completing missions unlocks higher and better gear. But unlike Destiny, the gear isn't locked behind levels, so essentially any class can use any weapon, unless it's specific to a certain class. There is gear like the smoke bomb to stun enemies, cattle traps to damage any foe that walks into them, and but whereas most gear-based leveling leads to annoyance and confusion, here it's very simple and easy to understand. All of these can be further customized again, just like the class abilities, adding further time sunk into this free update. As well as gear, new cosmetics have been added, for each of the classes allowing you to create your very own ghost. Some of these are unlocked through leveling up, but others are pretty challenging to unlock, like completing a nightmare mission without anyone going down. There is plenty of content for players to enjoy, from the story mode to the 4-player co-op wave mode, and to the newly released raid mode, of which I have not been able to play yet, for its level is way above my own skill. I hope to return to make another video about it in the future. The horde mode is really fun to play, as the map is littered with grappling points to swing on towards your destination, and the story mode has some really interesting objectives, such as fighting invisible enemies. New enemies have also been thrown into the mix, such as the Tengu, a crow-faced man who throws waves of crows at you like something out of Birdemic, and Uni spearmen that teleport all over the place trying to skewer you. These enemies require patience and planning, way more than what you would find in most co-op games. Now, it's not a completely flawless experience. There are still issues like getting stuck in a combat animation that can leave you wide open to an attack that you had no way of avoiding. This is something that was an issue in the main game when it comes to fighting enemies like the brutes. The archers do not give you any warning of their attacks if they're too far away, and a difficulty spike when going from bronze to silver. These issues are a disappointment, but it hasn't stopped me from coming back again and again to play even more. Legends is an excellent and addictive free experience, and shows that if a developer puts the time and effort into something, then the audience will love to come back for more. Ghost of Tsushima is the swan song for the PlayStation 4, and Legends is the icing on top.